Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here. So I wanted to ask you about a situation that we've been facing in New Hampshire, but I don't think New Hampshire is unique on this. So I received a number of complaints from my local libraries that they didn't receive the necessary tax forms and instruction booklets. So in New Hampshire, we happen to have a high percentage of people that actually will file by paper. And historically, they've been able to go to their local library and get the tax forms so that they can do their taxes. I wrote to you originally, I believe, in February about this issue. And the first response I got back, one of the primary reasons you said that these forms weren't being provided to people at their libraries in New Hampshire was that the IRS had budget was cut. But the reality is that on taxpayer services, Congress allocated the same amount of money. So why is it the IRS is unable to provide the same level of customer service this year? Because it's not just this library issue. You know, for us in New Hampshire to have to go through the runaround that we did to get our libraries the basic tax forms so people could file their taxes, I mean, it just was kind of unbelievable to me when my staff told me all the runaround we were going through. And so can you help me understand why this is happening? And what troubles me even more is that the National Taxpayer Advocate recently testified before the Senate Appropriations Committee that this year taxpayers are receiving the worst levels of taxpayer service since at least 2001. And the statistics are staggering in terms of 40% of the calls that the IRS is receiving from taxpayers are not being answered or responded to in any way.
Right. And the answer to that is the appropriation. We get an appropriation in buckets for enforcement, for operations, which is taxpayer service and information technology. IG and taxpayer advocate are off on the side. We also have user fees that go through in part of our operating budget that the appropriators are aware of. Historically, we've never been fully funded for taxpayer service. The amount of money provided has been then supplemented by, on average, about $150 million out of the various user fees that we charge. Because in both 14 and 15, we were zeroed out in funding for the Affordable Care Act. We asked for $300 million each year just for IT, and the Congress provided us zero. So the only way we could do it was to move money from wherever it was. So while the base appropriation for taxpayer service is the same, we had to take $100 million out of our user fee allocation to taxpayer service to put it into information technology to implement the act. So we have a significantly smaller amount of money available for taxpayer service than we've had before, and the appropriators understand that because we go through that with them regularly. We are as concerned as you are about the low level. As I said, I've now visited 37 cities. I've talked with, in town halls and otherwise, 13,000 IRS employees. And one of the common themes is not that they're overworked. One of the common themes is they want to help taxpayers. They get satisfaction out of answering questions. One of the concerns they had was when we told them they could only answer simple questions, not complicated questions, because complicated questions let the queue get longer. So it is clear, and we've tried to make it clear, we told the Congress last year, the appropriators, that if our budget was flat, let alone cut by $350 million, we expected the level of service would drop to 53%. When we got cut by an additional $350 million, we had no choice because we have to implement the statutory mandates. We have to run the filing season. We collect over $3 trillion for the government in the ordinary run of the filing season, so we can't afford that not to have to work. So when you cut our budget, the only places that get cut are enforcement, taxpayer service, and improvements in our information technology. Now, with regard to the forms, first of all, as I hope I explained, I thought when I read the letter and signed it to you and talked to people, our experience has been 85% of the forms we've been sending out don't get used. So we've been actually providing a lot of forms for landfills. For the libraries, as again we worked with the Library Association, we provided them the basic forms, not schedules and others, but we've provided them a format that would allow them to make copies of any form they wanted. They could download and make other copies of those. Anybody could call us. We have a special line for documents and ask for documents. We'd mail them to you. Now, there was a problem because with the extenders and the development of the forms, we could get them up online, and you could download them online. You could go straight online to get them. If you called us, it was going to take a few weeks longer before they actually got through the formal process. So we tried to, for taxpayers, give them alternatives. The library concern, which I understand, was printing documents, making copies is not a free good, you know, whether it's 10 cents or 15 cents a copy. With limited budgets, libraries are strained by that. But that's why we tried to encourage them to say, for their constituents, they could go online and download them themselves. Some people don't have access to the web.
The problem is the people that are going to the libraries don't necessarily have access
To the web. And those people, we tried to give visibility to it, could call a special line, and we would mail them the form.
Well, I literally had to send, we had to send my staff repeatedly over to get these forms for people in New Hampshire, and you know, we were only able to get 10 at a time. It was a little crazy. And let me just point out that from your testimony, the one thing that people need to understand is you had to take money from the taxpayer services line to fund the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, essentially, is what happened here, because
Yes.
we flat funded you the same on the taxpayer services, and you took the money to implement Obamacare.
The money you gave us for taxpayer services spent on taxpayer services, we actually put $50 million of user fees into it. It's the $100 million we had to put into the statutory mandate, and we have to do statutory mandates. We
Well,
don't
yeah,
have a choice.
and in the 15 budget, the GAO found the IRS used $12.1 million that was appropriated for taxpayer services to implement the Affordable Care Act.
Yes, we have no
Yeah.
choice. If you pass an act, the Congress passed, as I've said ironically, 3 days after our budget was cut by $350 million, the Congress passed the ABLE Act with no additional funding and said you got till June 1st to do that and the Professional Employees Organization Act.
before I leave,
We'll do that because you've told us to do it. But the only way we do that is we have to find the money somewhere. We have to take it where we have discretion.
Right, so we're taking it from our core functions to do this. And
That's
I wanted
correct.
I wanted to follow up on an issue that someone may have already asked you of, but I want to follow up, and that's the incorrect 1095A form sent to 800,000 individuals who enrolled in the health insurance through the federal exchange. Do you know how many taxpayers in New Hampshire received an incorrect 1095A reform?
I do not. Those forms are provided and designed and filled out by CMS, so they would be the ones that would, if anybody knows, they would know.
And do you think that the people who waited a little longer, as I understand, they're being treated differently and are still on the hook for paying, that if they owe a larger premium, that they, as I understand, there may be a distinction between those depending on when they filed and how they're going to be treated? How are the people in this country that, you know, were misled in terms of what they thought that they were going to be receiving or not receiving or having to pay? How are you going to treat those individuals, and what are we going to do with the lost revenue on that?
We have to sort through this. There were, of the 800,000, the estimate by CMS was about 50,000 had filed, 750,000 were in the same pool, and the 50,000 could file amendment if they wanted to. So it's not a distinction. In terms of being misled, we've had a long, I think, informative discussion that, and I think after the transition of the first year, people will understand it better. When you register and apply for insurance coverage, you make an estimate of what your income is going to be for the year of going forward, the way we all make estimates when we file our estimated payments and withholding. You make that payment judgment. We then provide income verification about what your last tax return filings were so that the marketplace can determine whether, in fact, that you've got an accurate estimate going forward. And on that basis, a determination is made. First, you know, by working it through, what the premium for your insurance is, and then a calculation is made how much of that premium will be paid on your behalf to the insurance company in an advance payment. One of the things that we tried to make clear from our standpoint, because we wanted people to make sure if they had a change in circumstances, that they had a different estimate of what they were going to earn, they needed to go back to the marketplace so they wouldn't have any bigger adjustment than necessary. But a lot of people actually, I think, went through and assumed that once they got the premium payment paid to the insurance company, that somehow it was never going to get reconciled. Most people understood they had to be reconciled, but a lot of people have, one way or the other, not understood that. We think going into next year, everybody will understand when you make an estimate of your income and your family circumstances, if your income goes up, then you're entitled to less support for your insurance payment. that goes forward. You still have the same insurance policy. It's just a question of how much do you pay, how much is the government paying. If the amount of income you're making goes up, you're going to be eligible for less. And if you let the marketplace know that immediately, it will adjust the advance payment immediately, and you'll have no change or reconciliation at the end of the year. So we've spent a lot of time, CMS has spent a lot of time over the last year trying to get people to understand, as 2014 unrolled, that if your estimate was wrong or changed, you needed to get back to the marketplace. A number of people did. That would mean you'd get a 1095A for the part of the year that you were under one coverage, and then you get another 1095A when your premium changed, so at the end you'd know exactly what your premiums were. We think that's going to get much better in the second year because everybody will have now been through it once and will understand that you're making an estimate of your income. You just have to be careful that that's as close to what the reality is going to be as you can make it. And if it changes over the course of the year, you need to get back to the marketplace.
Thank you.